I'm Daisy Sewell. I'm in my final year of an undergraduate degree at the university, and in today's episode, I'll be talking with the university's sabbatical officers about their collective and individual roles and varying experiences of St Andrew's life. As members and indeed leaders within the university's Student Association Board and Executive Committee, I believe their position within the university to offer us a unique and interesting perspective of life in the bubble. I am now joined by the President of the Students Association, Jamie Rodney, and Leah Allcock, President of the Athletic Union. So I guess if I could just ask you both to tell me a little bit about the role and remit of the sabbatical officers in general. What do you guys perceive as being your role?
So obviously SABs are full-time elected student representatives. We manage the student volunteers that keep the union running, and we help facilitate a better student experience on kind of different levels. I guess the easiest way of explaining the president's role is that I handle the kind of outward-facing stuff the union does. So things like accommodation, alumni relations, which is probably most relevant for this podcast, sustainability, and kind of student representation on a local, national and university level.
We basically try and make students have lots of fun and a good experience while they're at university. Obviously, everyone at university wants that too, but we can be the bridge between students and full-time staff. That's what we do. I'm Athletic Union President, so my remit is obviously sport. I refer to myself as the Queen of Sport. So essentially, I help all the students who have any involvement with the Athletic Union, whether that's going to the gym, playing sport recreationally, whole sport, or competitive sport throughout the year. So I work a lot with all the different sports clubs and all the staff over the Department of Sport and Exercise.
How do you both feel your student experience at the university has influenced your approach or work in the role? And I suppose why it made you want to do this in the first place?
Well, all through my time at university, I was a student athlete. I joined the netball club in my first year, and then I was on the committee of that for 3 years, and I was volunteering to coach in my spare time and basically just doing all the things that I now try and encourage other students to do. So that was definitely a massive part of it. In my final year, I joined the Athletic Union Executive Committee. Applications now open. And then spent a year basically working with the president who just left, Fiona. I mean, that was amazing because Fiona's amazing, the team's amazing, all the staff are incredible. And once I got to the end of that work, I was just so inspired to be the next Fiona and work with all the amazing people in the sports centre that I campaigned for it. And then I got the job, and it's been a fantastic year. So it was a massive influence.
Yeah, I mean, I guess similarly, I've always been pretty involved with campaigns and activism. Sort of similarly with Leah, that brought me into contact with my predecessor, Paloma, and Paloma's predecessor, Lewis, just doing various bits of work on different campaigns. So that sort of gave me an idea of what the problems of like in St Andrews were and kind of what the union could do to help solve them. Likely, I think that's kind of informed my approach. I've been quite campaigns oriented as a president.
Yeah, I was going to say, what have your main priorities been as president?
So affordability is a really big one. We are, over the next couple of months, going to put together a report on accommodation and its affordability in St Andrews that'll be signed off by the university, and that will then be given to my successor as president, and it will help them make an agreement with the university about the shape of the university's accommodation strategy going forward, just kind of some general principles to agree on. The last time that was done was in 2013, and that was the agreement that was agreed, Albany Park closing, Whitehorn and Powell opening up. I think what students want has changed slightly since then. I'm hoping this report will illustrate that and help whoever's president next year to advocate more strongly for affordable accommodation. I know,
because 2013, that's a while ago.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I suppose both of you have involvement with alumni. Could you just talk a bit about that?
I think in sport, the communities you become a part of are so strong. If you're part of a sports club, you can be training, so I was part of the netball club, we were training 6 hours a week together. For all that time, I was with the same group of girls, and they quickly become your best friends in the world. So I think one of the areas that St Andrews Alumni Collections can be really strong is through sport. People want to come back, and quite often when people move on to kind of start the rest of their lives, they don't have the same outlet in sport anymore. You don't have the time to go for a 5k run every day with the athletics club, or to join a football club or anything like that. So quite often the people that we see coming back might not have been able to play anywhere near as much as they want to, and all they actually really want to do is come back and have a kick around or chuck a rugby ball about or get back in the pool or something. So we quite often have alumni fixtures take place as well. Last year I was lucky enough to go and watch I think it was a 10-year reunion of the water polo club, and they did like an alumni versus students game. It was absolutely fantastic to watch, and there were people who'd graduated, you know, in the 90s or in the early 2000s, playing sport against students who were literally 18 or 19 years old, just beginning their kind of St Andrews adventure. It's absolutely fantastic to see. I think we're really good for getting quite a lot of that about.
I was going to say, if any alumni listening, they want to get back involved with their sport, there's definitely opportunities.
Definitely. You can either get in touch directly through the sports centre, or all of the clubs have email accounts, and it's just the name of the sport, and then it's at standrews.ac.uk, like all email addresses are. And recently I actually had a gentleman contact me who just had his 80th birthday, and his daughter, for his birthday present, got a copy of his blues certificate from all those years ago, and we sent him a new blues tie and a new blues badge, and that was his 80th birthday present.
Amazing.
And then he's got in touch with me to say that he'd love to see like his mile record and get in touch with the current club and to see things like that when you know, this guy graduated 60 years ago, and he's still massively passionate about athletics.
That's so nice.
Amazing, yeah.
And Jamie, how are you involved with the alumni?
So I think my involvement with alumni is less direct and less extensive than Leah's. You know, we'll occasionally get alumni emailing in, asking questions. Some of them are more relevant than others. What is a really kind of wholesome development is a lot of, especially pretty recent alumni, want to donate their gowns.
That's
say
nice.
like give it to someone who can't afford it. That's probably my favourite way of interacting with alumni.
And I know I think you write a piece for the Chronicle to report on to the alumni more generally about what's going on in the town.
Yeah, we focus for the Chronicle quite a lot on, first of all, our kind of St Andrews community and the way our kind of volunteers and students contribute to that. And yeah, it's just a way of keeping people up to date about what's happening here, what's important, what we can still be proud of.
And I suppose just more generally for both of you, how have you found transitioning from being students in St Andrews to working professionals within the university?
It's been pretty weird.
Yeah.
No, it's been good. It's a big learning curve, but I don't regret doing it.
I think the fantastic thing about SAB roles is that, obviously, like you say, you're transitioning to part of a working community, but you're still not that far from being a student. So it's this perfect storm of all the things you did as a student. Lots of your mates are still about. If you want to be part of a club or a society, you still can. So like I still play netball 3 or 4 times a week with all the girls that I played with for the last 4 years. Then I also get kind of the added bonus of getting to speak to all the staff and getting to have more of an impact on student life than I did before. So whilst it is like a massive transition in terms of 9am do not suit me at all, I'm not a 9am gal, so that's a big struggle. But then at the same time, you get to be so close to students still. And I will meet students, you know, at least 3 or 4 times a week from various clubs, talk about various things. But then you get to take those things to a higher level and actually be able to kind of bring the student voice to the staff and help kind of create those compromises that are part of what makes the St Andrews student experience so great. You know, it's the thing that is best about this university has always been student experience. So to be part of making that better, it's just fantastic. Like Jamie says, like no regrets.
It is, I guess, paradoxical almost, because like on one hand, by definition, if you're a SAB, you're not a student, you're a level removed from students. But when you're going into meetings with people that, you know, have expertise and experience that you don't, sort of the only thing you can offer that they can't is that you're in touch with the student community, you know what's going on.
Great, well thank you very much. I think we'll move on to our next 2 guests, so thank you guys.
Yeah,
thank
cheers.
you. So now I am joined by Shaina Sullivan, our Director of Student Development and Activities, and Amy Bretherton, Director of Education. So I guess if we could just start with you guys, maybe telling me a little bit about your roles.
So I'm the Director of Education, and obviously at St Andrews University you can imagine that education takes real centre stage on things that happen. I guess Obviously, education is primarily delivered by academics, but when we're making policies, it's really important to have student views in making those, because obviously academics have often been out of the student experience for 20 or more years, and so it's really important to have someone to kind of say, actually, I don't know how well that would work, or I think this would be preferred. And so I do a lot of that kind of work firsthand by sitting on a lot of committees. I sit on about 103 committees where I work on kind of act as a student voice, but I also line manage the academic representation system. So that's class reps. So there's about 400 of those, and basically each year group has a class rep who will work with academics to improve students' academic experience, to improve kind of content delivery and resources in classes. So they're kind of the very much grassroots representatives. And on top of that, we have a school president. So there's a school president for every single school, and they do a huge amount of work. Firstly, based on just kind of generally working on the modules that are offered in their school, but also in terms of careers provisions, like careers events, careers resources. They also have a big role in creating community in their schools, so they'll run a lot of socials, balls, these kind of things. So I look after those people, but I also have a lot of involvement in kind of projects and initiatives that are to do with education, so things like I set up a lecture series for postgraduates this year to help them to showcase their research. I also run a competition called the Enterprising Mind of the Year competition, which is for students who've displayed fantastic entrepreneurial capacity in their studies. And also I run things like the Student-Led Teaching Awards, which is where we thank tutors that have displayed great commitment to students in their learning experience.
How many committees? 100?
103. Yeah, that's quite a lot of meetings.
Crazy, honestly. And Shaina, what's your role all about?
Yes, so as Director of Student Development and Activities, obviously on the student activity side, I kind of oversee all things societies and subcommittees. So we have over 150 societies, everything from baking to Pokemon, literally anything in between. Also on the subcommittee side, so that includes things like mermaids, performing arts, debates, charities, all of those. I line manage all the presidents of those larger subcommittees through our Student Services Council. So I sit in all their meetings, I kind of advise on their activities and things like that. And then on the other side, student development, I work really closely with K-Pod to sort of develop training programs for those student leaders. I do a lot of volunteering stuff, so I do volunteer recognition, I run the volunteer portal. I like to say DASDA is kind of like the catch-all SAB, so anything that doesn't fall within education, well-being, events kind of just falls to DASDA. So yeah, lots of random things.
And what made you guys apply for the positions? Were you involved a lot before?
So I got involved because I firstly was a class rep in my third year for Spanish, and then I was school president of modern languages in my fourth year, and I wanted to do this role because I really love doing school president, and I just kind of wanted to do it full time. I think from my experiences as a school president, you can actually have so much influence and you can get so much achieved, and so I kind of wanted to, I think, spearhead that for other volunteers that were involved in academic representation.
So I started out doing mermaids. So one of the subcommittees, I organized a Christmas ball, and then went back and I was the vice president of mermaids, and then did a few other things with LGBT, some student peer support, things like that. And so the DASDA last year was my line manager, and so I kind of got to see, his name was Jamie, kind of got to see like all the things that he did, and I became interested in doing it, and then
And how do you feel that your student experience has impacted the way you work in St Andrews now? Like, how has it been, the transition?
I think that as a student I got super involved in things, and I would say that that is actually pretty characteristic for most St Andrews students. I think it's so easy to kind of get motivated when you're in a community of really, really active like student representatives. So I'd say that's kind of influence it's had on me.
So another part of my job is working with admissions on open days. So when there are visiting days, I go and sit in Lower College Hall and get to interact with prospective students on just if they have any questions about the union, the student experience. I always get the question, isn't it boring here? And to that, I always say, well, it's kind of the opposite actually. There's not a lot here, so people make their own events, and there's always something always going on. That's helped me realize how important student activities are. And that's kind of helped me while in my job to realize like it might not seem like the society event is that important, but it really is.
And do you guys have any kind of connections with alumni through your roles?
I don't particularly directly, but the school presidents that I line manage have a lot of connection with them, so they're really involved in kind of careers events, and that is kind of typically reaching out to alumni to kind of see if they can come back for panel discussions, or I've done a bit of work with advertising St Connect, which is kind of like the LinkedIn of St Andrews. And I think students just really appreciate, having insights from people who've done a degree here and seeing where they've taken it. And I guess it's nice I can imagine as myself who's going to be alumni in a few months, nice to come back and kind of share with students who are kind of a bit lost and maybe not quite sure where their degree is going to take them, to give them a bit of advice about the kind of places you can go.
Yeah, this year I've been working pretty closely with Olivia, the association alumni officer, to try to work with the alumni department at development to work on collating society members who've graduated, so that people can stay in touch and kind of advertise their alumni events to students who've graduated. So we're kind of in the process of doing that at the moment. A man emailed me last semester. He was a student in 1965 and he founded the Celtic and Cayley Society, he said, and he's now written a book about his time in St Andrews and his time in the Celtic and Cayley Society and how much dancing and Celtic and Cayley music has shaped who he is. And he's selling that book to raise money for the Leah Music Centre that's just about to open.
That's it's come full circle.
It was
that's
really
so
lovely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, how lovely. I suppose just to finish off, what are your priorities for the rest of your tenure?
I think my biggest priority at the moment is working on kind of formalising some of the support around the academic representation system. So school presidents, I mentioned, have quite a lot of responsibilities and they do, I think, amazing jobs that really improve, have an active impact on student experience. That I'm kind of working on creating some kind of actual support in terms of personnel for them, so kind of through class reps, but also kind of things like shadowing periods and just more kind of guidance, and also some more support within my role to kind of help them to achieve what they want to do, but also around I have a focus around postgraduate engagement as well. So I'm working around kind of giving postgraduate reps more agency in their roles to kind of create cohort identity for master's students. So those kind of two things, and I think also creating some legacy for the postgraduate lecture series that I've set up, because that kind of gives research students quite a unique opportunity to present their research in a lecture style format, which is really valuable for their CVs. So I'm going to kind of try and make sure that goes beyond my term.
I think for me, so I'm working on volunteer recognition, trying to get student volunteers official recognition onto their official transcript at the end of university. It'd be great to get that recognition on there for them. So that's what I'm currently working on, hoping to get that finalized before I leave. Also looking at society reaffiliation, so making sure that all the societies are reapplying to be a part of the association and that all of that handover is really smooth.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank
for
you.
Chat to me. Thank you. Many thanks to our guests, the Sabbatical Officers, for taking the time to speak with me today.